Hello, and we are live approximately 48 hours after the Bears staged one of the most dramatic wins that any Bears fan has ever seen. We're going to break it all down from top to bottom. We're going to preview the Giants game from left to right, and we're going to talk about the trade Ryan Pohl made and the trades he didn't make. We're going to put a spotlight on the importance of the November games for the Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone, and welcome to Buffone 55.
Doug Buffone was a Bear. He was a great LB. And when he went on the air, he said stuff without a scare.
This defense sucks. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
One of the greats. Buffone was a Bear. He was a Chicago Bear. Now at the barroom for year 9, knowing winning is the bottom line. John Buffone continues the legacy. He's got Doug's pedigree.
If you look at this team and this quarterback and this coach, if it's not going to be now, when?
And John does it with two pros, Alyssa Barbieri and Danny Shimon. Buffone, 55 years old Bear, covering all the team's affairs. Buffone, 55 years old Bear, covering all the team's affairs.
Hello again and welcome to Buffone 55. I am your host, John Buffone, and woo, what a win to talk about here today on the show. Just to give you some immediate emotional reactions that I was going through. For some of you in the chat room and those of you listening and watching, you may be aware that I'm a boxing coach. And so for whatever reason, I had to coach at a boxing event on Sunday during the Bears game. And I found myself escaping back to the coach's office and watching the game, making sure that I was keeping up with it. But as my fighter was about to get into the ring, it was towards the end of the fourth quarter. And so I got my phone and I'm waiting for them to announce our boxer. And as we are ready to walk to the ring, I see Caleb Williams connect with Colston Loveland to win the game. And I'm going nuts. I'm going, let's go. I'm screaming. So people really thought that I was probably amped up to walk to the ring, even though I wasn't even fighting. I was just coaching. People probably thought I was going out of my mind, but it was because the Bears won. And I was just, those are games that we are so used to as Bears fans, them losing, and they found a way to win. I don't care if it's ugly. I don't care if they botched the onside kick and the defense was giving up 500 yards to Joe Flacco. They found a way to do it, and those are games that they usually lose that they are now winning. I'm not going to complain about it. Let's get this conversation going with my co-host. First off, help me welcome Alyssa Barbieri, the Midwest managing editor of USA Today's Football Wires, including Bears Wire, and Danny Shimon, the Barroom's lead analyst and draft evaluator of potential Bears prospects at Shimon Draft Scout on YouTube. Danny, you were at the game. Did you need resuscitated a few times? What was going on when you were actually in the stadium watching this?
Man, John, it was, first of all, it was a terrific atmosphere. It was a terrific game to be at. Cincinnati fans were very gracious, very welcoming. Nothing happened. Nothing crazy happened there. But I do have to say, I was so proud of the Chicago Bears fans for showing up and standing out. I don't know if it came through on a TV copy during the game, but during that fourth quarter, the entire stadium started erupting with "Let's Go Bears." And at one point, they started cheering while the Bengals were on offense. And at one point, it got to the point where Flacco wasn't unable to communicate with his offensive lineman to actually literally walk up and start yelling at them and kind of use a semi-silent cadence there as well. So that was really impressive. Bears fans showed up and showed up. But, yeah, I mean, that game, talk about a roller coaster of emotions. Obviously, we get there, the kickoff, they return it back for a touchdown. The Bengals fans are up in arms. And then, I was sitting with some season ticket holders in terms of Cincinnati fans in front of me and next to me, and I had a couple. I had a Bears fan who was born in Chicago but lives in Cincinnati. His son is born in Cincinnati. So his son's a Bengals fan, and he's a Bears. His dad's a Bears fan. So that was a crazy mix there. But man, it was after the initial the shock of the kickoff. They come down and they do the. That was the reverse DJ Moore pass to Caleb for the first score. We're like, all right, Ben Johnson's in his bag of tricks, but only did we know what we were going to see the rest of the way. So just fast forward a real quick, funny story here. So 2:20 after the Edmonds pick, right in the fourth quarter, we're like, all right, Bears, we got it. So let's get a head start on traffic here, guys. What do you think? So we start walking out. We get to the concourse at 2:29. I think it was 2:24 left in the fourth quarter. Bears are punting. It's in the bag. Start walking down. A bunch of Bears fans are all walking down the ramp or going or all high fiving, blah blah blah. And then we hear a little bit of a crowd roar. Whatever. And we keep walking. Then we get down to like the lower level area, and I hear Bengals fans erupt saying, "We got the kick! We got the kick!" And I'm like, what? I'm like, did they onside kick and they get it back? And so then I'm like, excuse me, what happened? And he goes, the Bengals just recovered the onside kick. We got the ball. I'm like, oh, the Bears are going to do this. The Bears are going to kill this for us, right? So as we're walking out, there's like these gated areas where the first level comes in, and there's like all these TVs. So we're all staying out. All of us hover. We have Bengals fans. We have Bears fans. Everyone's leaving. We're just like hover over these like gates. We're holding on to this gate. We're watching through these little holes, and we see the Bengals score. And the Bengals fans erupt. And then the concourse people, the people that work in the stadium, they're all high-fiving. They're all going crazy. And then the Bears come on offense. And I'm just sitting there. I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening. I was there with my girlfriend. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. We drove all this way. We had this great game and this great feeling. And they, within 15 points, within less than 3 minutes in the game, they're going to blow this game. And then we're just sitting and watching. And obviously the Bears get on offense. And then when Colston breaks the big run, we all erupt. The Bears fans just all erupt, and we're all high-fiving, and the Bengals fans put their head down and just walk away. It was a roller coaster of emotions from the opening kick to the last play of the game. It was just unbelievable. And finally, then we were able to calmly walk out, and a bunch of Bears fans were singing "Bear Down, Chicago Bears." Some are chanting "Packers suck." So that's how we ended up. That's how that ended up in the game. So I ended up watching the last 2 minutes of the game through a gate, like through a fence, just kind of like one of these, like, people outside of the stadium. I left with 2 minutes and 25 seconds left in the game.
Danny, as you've been a Bears fan long enough to know that you should never assume anything's in the bag, especially with 2 minutes left. There's a lot of time to screw stuff up there. They never, ever leave. Like there's always a chance something terrible can happen, and we've seen that happen. So, but at least you were on site to be in that atmosphere, and you didn't have to. At least they won the game, so you didn't have to say, "Oh, I left early because it was in the bag," and then they ended up blowing it. So at least you had a good story to tell.
I was so down. My face was red because I was so angry, and then just the flick of the emotion, just like gone out. Now it's euphoria. Everyone's happy, and Bears fans are singing, and everybody's like, "We can't believe it came down to the last second," and just gave us a little more thing to talk about as we walked out of the stadium.
Excellent. Now, Alyssa, you're watching on TV like the rest of us. You also have there's a journalistic side to this too, because your lead probably changed 9 times towards the end of this game, where it's like you're gonna focus on this, and then oh no, they're gonna lose. I'm gonna focus on this, and like, oh no, they won. I gotta focus on this now. Take me through what was going on while you were watching. Oh, you're muted, Alyssa. For the first time ever, you're muted.
Muted. Okay, am I here? I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. this game took years off of my life, and I was watching from home. So Danny, I don't know how you did that. That I don't think I would have survived that experience, just because. And you're right, John. I'm sitting there and I'm changed. I just left it alone at one point. I'm like, I'll deal with it after the game. But it's crazy because, like you said, this is the kind of game that the Bears have always found a way to lose. And this season with Ben Johnson, I feel like they're winning in every possible way imaginable. Like whether they're getting the blowout against the Cowboys or they're blocking potential game-winning field goals, kicking game-winning field goals themselves. And now they finally filled out their bingo card and won in a shootout. So, I mean, that was just an absolute crazy game. And just screaming, I'm surprised my neighbors did not call the cops on me because it was very loud when Colston scored that touchdown. Like, I can imagine people thought you were crazy at your boxing event, John. Just very thankful to my neighbors for just being like, must be Sunday. Alyssa's watching the Bears.
Yeah, and I was celebrating as if we already scored a knockout before the match even started, and which in a way the Bears did, and then Eddie, just for a follow up, our fighter did win, so it was an all around good Sunday for me. So our fighter won, the Bears won. It was just
the Packers lost, and the
Packers lost, and the Lions lost, and the Bears are sitting pretty not too bad in the division right now. We'll talk about that later, but all around just a pretty solid Sunday. Now we may have lost 4 or 5 years from our lives from the stress that it caused, but nevertheless, we came out victorious on Sunday. I'll take a short-term victory, and I'll deal with that stuff down the road. But let's talk about that game a little bit. Danny, you're there watching it, and I'm sure you've looked over some tape since then. Clutch performers, and that's something that we have not been able to talk about very often with the Chicago Bears when it comes down to needing a big play, making that game-winning play, or doing that last thing that gets them over the edge. We don't get to talk about that much, at least we haven't in the last 4 or 5 years. So who was your clutch performer in this game?
Well, there's a ton, right? To start, you go with Kyle Monangai coming in, filling in for the injured DeAndre Swift. You have obviously Colson Loveland having his big breakout game. Caleb was back playing, some good football there. But for me, guys, it was the offensive line. I mean, I think the offensive line really kind of put their foot forward in terms of, especially, in the running game. Now, I know it's a Bengals defense and they're not the best defense in the world, but still, you're out there. I mean, Caleb had, again, from my point of view, I like Caleb had plenty of time to go ahead and go back there and make plays. There were a couple times where he had to, if it was rush, he kind of escaped, eluded pressure, and made things happen on his own with his legs. But I think offensive line, especially in the run game, I think they kind of went out there and made the Bengals get off their spot, the defenders get off the spot, and created some of those nice gaps, some nice holes for the run game there to develop. And also, some of these plays that Ben Johnson was calling, some of the trick plays. I mean, you need time to block it up. You also obviously need time to execute it. I think those are also were things where I gave the offensive line some credit there. The penalties, I mean, there are a couple more false start and holding penalties, but nothing too outrageous for my recollection. So I think the offensive line was the unsung hero of that game.
Alyssa, you're breaking down the different positions. Who's your clutch performer or clutch position or group of folks that were clutch performers in this game?
I mean, I guess I'll just go the obvious, the rookies, just what they stepped up when they needed to on offense in a shootout where, historically the Bears don't really fare well. And I got to start with my Michigan man, Colson Loveland. This is the guy that the Bears drafted. This is who Ben Johnson wanted on offense. And we finally caught a glimpse of it in his rookie season, leading the team with 6 catches for 118 yards, scored his first 2 career NFL touchdowns, including that just incredible 58-yard touchdown where I was just happy that they were getting in field goal position, but I was not very excited about the prospect of Cairo Santos having to win us the game. So Colston saved us from that. And what can I say? That the guy knows how to win in Ohio. He's made a living of it. And then Kyle Monangai, like Danny was mentioning as well, just making his first start, stepping in for DeAndre Swift, who was just on a tear. And he had 100 rushing yards just in the first half alone, which is crazy. And he racked up almost 200 yards on the ground and averaged 6.8 yards per carry, which was just absolutely insane. And again, a lot of the credit goes to the offensive line, like Danny was saying. And Caleb, after a rough start there in the first half, I think he stepped in and settled in. And, he's at his best when he's Superman at the end of the game. And he really delivered on that last drive. But just a really good performance from the rookies, I think. And I think it's a bright future.
Yeah, and you guys kind of just went through all of those performers, and all of them were clutch in one way or another. I'm going to go out of the box and say my clutch performer is Ben Johnson, because honestly, if this is the situation last year with Matt Eberflus at the helm, do they win this game? Do they win this game with that coaching staff last year? They don't. Even if they're at the exact same position, the exact same thing going on with 2 minutes left or whatever, and these things start breaking apart, and they're, it's red flags going up, and we're panicking, the Bears lose that game. Plain and simple. So, kudos to Ben Johnson for the play calling. Kudos to Ben Johnson for creating a culture where this team doesn't think they're out of it until the clock hits triple zeros. I think that's one of the biggest things. And so maybe that's not in the moment clutch, but without it, those other guys don't get to be clutch either. So my clutch performer is Ben Johnson. Now, Alyssa, you mentioned Kyle Monangai and that run game, and obviously DeAndre Swift was out, and so the rookie had to tote the rock a lot more than what he has been. Talk about his performance and how he was able to step up. And you know what? Well, we're going to talk about trades later, but was this performance kind of a way of saying, hey, we don't need another running back. We got one.
Yeah, I think, going back to when the Bears were struggling with the run game heading into the bye week, Ben Johnson was talking about, first it was DeAndre Swift. He's not getting it done, fans are saying. And Ben was like, the issue is not DeAndre Swift. And coming off the bye week, we saw how they, and the offensive line has been a huge part of that, and getting Theo Benedict in there at left tackle. Just the run game being overhauled entirely. I think that they have a really good 1-2 punch here with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. So, I wasn't surprised. I know we're going to get to the trade deadline a little later, but wasn't surprised to see them not make a push for a running back. I don't think they need one at this point of the season. I think obviously the issues are on defense, but I think seeing Monangai, we've seen some running backs, in the 7th round, like Isaiah Pacheco, come out and really develop into solid players. And perhaps the Bears have one in Kyle Monangai, because we'll see what DeAndre Swift's future holds. But I think that, we'll see how Swift does this week, if he's able to come back. But I think the Bears might even be comfortable kind of giving him another week, resting him just to make sure he's 100% healthy, and leaning on Kyle Monangai against, and we'll talk about it later too, a Giants run defense that I think, maybe Monangai could replicate that performance.
Danny, obviously Ben Johnson would like to have the same kind of running game in Chicago that he had in Detroit. After that performance from Monangai, are you confident, or what's your confidence level that he could potentially be that long-term solution there?
Yeah, I am very confident Kyle Monangai. I've been clamoring for him to get more carries, and it was close, John. Like the previous weeks, he would run a 5-10 yard run, and then there was one extra block there, one extra a missed block, or offensive lineman holding on to his block a little bit longer, and he could have busted off for a little bit longer run there. So it's been close with the running game, and I think that what he did on Sunday. And again, I always have to preface this, unfortunately, by saying I know it's a Bengals defense, but still they are NFL players, right? They still, I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, they made the Bears punt more than the Bears made them punt. So I'm not going to take away any credit from what Kyle Monangai did versus the Bengals. I'm just saying that this is a guy that is a nice, very good complement to DeAndre Swift. Swift obviously is a guy that does better on those outside zone runs, get him to the outside, get him in space, and let him use his athletic ability and speed to be able to make plays out in the open field. Monangai is more of that pale, downhill, and between the tackles type of hard runner. His vision in between the tackles is pretty good. He's tremendous in terms of contact balance and power to bounce off defenders and keep churning. And the other thing is he's got tremendous ball security, right? This guy has not fumbled. He didn't fumble in his career at Rutgers. So far, knock on wood, hasn't fumbled here with the Bears as well. So, he gives you that reliability. Initially, first couple weeks, his pass blocking wasn't the best, but he's even improved there as well. So I mean, this is a kid that puts his he's a grinder. He puts his nose down and he works hard, and the coaching staff has seen it, and now they're rewarding him with more opportunities. And I'm telling you, the Bears need to be a run-first team. Build everything off of the run with the play action, and that's only going to settle down Caleb. It's only going to get the offense in rhythm, and it's going to set a tone moving forward for the Bears offense.
I tell you what, if Monangai keeps having performances like that, the national media is going to have to learn how to say his name, because they are butchering the heck out of it right now, trying to say Kyle Monangai's name whenever they're referencing his performance against the Bengals. So if he keeps doing that, you're going to have to learn how to say Kyle Monangai at some point. So let's hope that he keeps performing like that. But a big reason that he was able to run like that was the offensive line. So Danny, we've been talking about the offensive line all year. We're talking about how are they going to move the puzzle pieces. they played pretty well. Darnell Wright looks like he is turning into a monster. Can you talk a little bit about the offensive line and their job against the Bengals?
Yeah, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the fourth or fifth game together with the same unit. So I think they're gelling. And Ben Johnson's been saying that once they get more cohesive in terms of playing together, I think you'll see a little more cohesiveness in terms of execution and results on the football field. And that's, to me, like I said, I mentioned them earlier. They were, for me, were the guys that really paved the way for this breakout game. In terms of the protecting Caleb in the pocket, setting up time for those trick plays to happen, but mainly that run game. I mean, whenever the Bears felt like they needed to get a first down, there was, I believe, a third and 7, they ran the ball and they got the first down. So it's that setting that tone and being that offensive line that helps your offense, churn the yardage, keep the sticks moving, and develop a nice consistent running attack that can complement your passing attack. I think that is huge. And in terms of Darnell Wright, I mean, I think this one might have been one of his better run blocking games, and he was putting guys down. He was burying defenders into the ground. So that's what I want. And there's a celebration where I'm not sure what that's for, but maybe for Darnell Wright having a great game. But that was, again, I just want that to continue. I want that to be the emphasis moving forward here, where that physicality up front from the offensive line, where they continue to run through defenders, even if the defense knows it's coming. Block it up, move them out of the way, set the tone, be that physical team on offense, as Ben Johnson has been wanting to be. Once that gets established, now you're going to see that passing game get better and better.
Alyssa, like we said, we've been talking about the different combinations at offensive line. They've had this one for a few weeks. Who stood out to you as far as the offensive line play?
I mean, just like Danny said, just Darnell Wright is just really developing as one of the best right tackles in the NFL. Really impressed with what he was able to do, especially in the run game. But I mean, I feel like Joe Thuney's quietly been their best offensive lineman all season. And when you're not hearing offensive linemen's names, normally they are just they're doing very well, right? So I mean, I think that Thuney has been very impressive, and I think that's been one of the most important moves that Ryan Poles made this offseason. And I think that we're also starting to see Jonah Jackson settle in. He got off to a rough start, so it's nice to see him starting to settle down a little bit and helping solidify that interior offensive line. And Drew Dahlman, he's still solid, when the snap issues aren't happening between him and Caleb, but just really impressed, I think, with the entire interior offensive line. And they've really, really set the tone there, especially with the run game.
And Danny, Alyssa talked about the rookies, and they were her clutch performers coming out of this game, specifically Colson Loveland. I believe you have a little bit of tape on Colson Loveland to break down. Can you take us through some of those big plays for him?
Yeah, during the draft process, for me, Colson Loveland was the best tight end prospect of the top two that would complement Cole Kmet. And I think some of the things that I loved about him coming out was his athletic ability, his size, 6'6", 248 pounds, long reach, long arms, 32+ inch arm length with 10-inch big hands, soft hands, natural hands catcher, athletic, looks like a big rocked up wide receiver, basically tremendous out of his routes, explodes off the line of scrimmage into his routes, long strides, eats up cushion and defensive backs. And unfortunately, we hadn't seen much of that, seen much of the tight ends period for first weeks of the season. But then at this time, unfortunately, when Cole Kmet got injured, it was Colson Loveland's turn to shine, and he did. And we picked 3 plays here. This first one is the touchdown, his first touchdown here, his first NFL touchdown. It was here, Colson lined up here on the outside of the numbers, looks like a big receiver. And the one thing here is the Bengals show zone initially, but once that ball snapped, they're playing man coverage. And what the key thing is here is obviously Colson. We talked about his release at the line of scrimmage. Had inside leverage on the defender. Once that middle linebacker, who looks like he's spying on Caleb in case he runs, once he kind of shifts to his right, that opens up that small window. And take a look at the footwork here by Caleb. Again, I talked about timing and rhythm, right? That third foot hits, that ball is out. He makes a tight window throw over the outstretched arm of that linebacker. And again, Loveland, because of his size, is natural hands catcher, also the ability to shed and use that frame from that DB. Gives Caleb a nice target. That was the play right there. Once Caleb's foot hit, ball was out, and it was in the hands of Colson Loveland for his first touchdown. So some of the things that he gives you is that big body receiver on the outside, his ability to run, good routes. He's still developing as a route runner. That's one area of his game that he's going to have to continue to work on. He's getting better and better as a blocker as well. We have some tape clips of that coming up here as well too. But that added size and athletic ability from a tight end position is a tremendous weapon that just got kind of untapped there on Sunday. I feel like there's more big play potential from him coming out. And that was one of the reasons, again, from Michigan, he was a guy that gave you dynamic ability down the football field. But here, our next clip here, we're going to talk about some of the areas, another area where I think he's getting better, and improving as well. And again, his versatility, because he's so athletic. Here we see him line up in the backfield as a fullback. Looks like it's going to be a run to the right here, but he pivots course, reverses, has the athletic ability, speed, long strider, makes up a lot of ground with his running ability, gets outside, gets to the defensive back there, DJ Turner, and is able to kind of shed him, block him, and give DJ Moore a lane to get into the end zone. What eventually ended up being a touchdown, which is a whole different weird kind of situation that happened there. But again, that is some area where now we're seeing Colson get better out here is getting out in space, using some of his athletic ability, using that length and athleticism to get out, be a blocker in space, and give DJ Moore a nice running lane there to the end zone. So that's an area. And also we've seen him get better and better in terms of inline as a blocker as well. And then the third play, obviously, this is the top play here. This is on the game-winning touchdown. Once the motion goes, run goes in motion, Caleb knows that it's zone and it's a too high zone. And Ben Johnson said post game that they were looking for a particular, a particular look, a particular defensive a call there to utilize this play. Once they realized it was zone, they're playing too high. And I've been saying for years, when Matt Eberflus's defense, how do you beat these cover two high safety looks? In the middle of the football field. Again, great play here. Colson take off the line of scrimmage in his release. Does a nice job of eating the cushion of that defensive back with his long strides and his speed. Does a nice job, curls over that middle defender. And again, look at Caleb. He's in rhythm. 1, 2, 3, bam, one hitch. Ball is out, throws it to a spot where only Colson can make a play on it. And then the Bengals take over from there, right? The two safeties converge on Colson. They can't bring him down. And then, again, we see the athletic ability. We see that speed, that dynamic ability he brings to this offense from that tight end position, just runs away from defenders and scores what could be one of the biggest touchdowns that we'll see this season here with the Bears. So dynamic, big play ability, great size, big catch radius, gives you a different dimension than Cole Kmet. And that's why I thought this was the perfect compliment for Cole coming out of the draft.
I can watch that throw over and over and over again. That laser rifle throw, the catch, the ping pong ball off of the two defenders, and it's just that was the I guess, is that our Hail Mary moment? Like with like last year, whenever they lost to the Commanders, was this something that helped springboard them to a lot of wins? Because the Hail Mary resulted in 10 straight losses. So hopefully this can catapult the Bears into a longer winning streak. I want to switch sides of the ball because let's not.
But just real quick, it's funny you mentioned Hail Mary because when they were blowing that lead, I think was Washington, last year. Blowing, it wasn't that big of a lead, but still, it was that type of choke job, if you will, if they lost this game. But luckily, that didn't happen. We could just move on.
I thought 17 seconds was too much. I was scared.
Oh yeah, like I said,
I was scared too.
No, until it's 000, I don't feel comfortable about anything, and that's just ingrained to us, into our DNA as Bears fans. Do not feel comfortable until about 15 seconds after the final whistle, just in case something else would happen. So that's just what we do. But I want to switch sides of the ball real quick because I don't want to act like the giving up over 40 points is just something not to pay attention to moving forward. But Alyssa, looking over this defensive effort against the Bengals, Joe Flacco is cooking. They have two great receivers in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. What did you like about the defense, and what did you maybe not like about the defense? Because there's plenty to choose for both.
Yeah, I feel like I want to start with the good just because it was so bad. I mean, I guess the good would be the run defense. They allowed just 46 yards after last week's struggles. But again, the Bengals were passing the ball a lot because they could do whatever they wanted to against that passing defense. But I also really liked, the pass rush, it's still not where it needs to be, but I did see improvement. And, Montez Sweat, I think, has really come alive in the last 3 games. He has 3 sacks in the last 3 games. And I think he's really stepping it up. And Austin Booker coming in and making his first start this season. Playing in his first game this season, and comes up big with that strip sack. And I think that, especially now with Dio, his season-ending Achilles injury, I think we're going to see a lot more of Austin Booker. And I think he's going to be the starter opposite Montez. But that's for the good. But I think obviously the bad was the passing defense. Anytime that you are allowing a 40-year-old quarterback like Joe Flacco to put up 470 passing yards and 4 touchdowns and 42 points, I mean, that's just not good. They were just absolutely shredded. It was giving shades of the Lions game, and I'm like, oh goodness, they don't have it in them to get into a shootout. But luckily, they weren't playing the Lions defense; they were playing the Bengals defense, so they were able to come away with that. But yeah, it was just. I mean, this is one of the games where the offense needed to kind of pull the weight for the defense. We've seen the defense do that for the offense earlier in the year. So I really like that they're playing that complementary football where, at times, you're going to need a bigger performance from one unit or the other to step up. But I mean, there's a lot more bad than good, but I think that, I don't know, we'll see what the defense could do coming up here.
You know what? Earlier in the year, we said, well, and this is whenever we were kind of anticipating Joe Burrow still being the quarterback. It's like some of these games are going to have to win a shootout. Do you feel comfortable with the Bears having to win a shootout? And none of us were overly confident that, like, oh, if this is going to be a 38-35 game, 40-38 game, that, oh man, I don't think the Bears. That's not what they're designed for right now. But that's exactly what they did. So I mean, so Danny, I'm going to ask you a question that just kind of popped in my head here. Would you have rather have won this game, 20-17, and the Bears just got after the Cincinnati offense that was clicking? Or do you like that they had to win a shootout and they had to put up the points?
Oh, I haven't thought about that, but that's a good question, John. I mean, typically, I do. A good team needs to have a good defense, right? And what the thing when we have the Bears is if they don't get turnovers, it's very likely they're not going to win that game, right? So like last week they had no turnovers, they lost that game against the Ravens, or I believe that they may have 1 turnover, but they lost turnover battle. Anyway, this week they had the 3 turnovers and they ended up winning the game. So what they're up until that final 2-minute stretch, they hadn't really been bad, right? Because I remember the first 7 points were on special teams. Okay, so so I think that what was that, 20 some points that they had given up, and the Bengals have those 2 dynamic receivers on the outside, and a lot of times we were in the stands where we're like, why are they playing zone on Jamar Chase? It doesn't matter if you play zone or man. Jamar Chase is going to beat the guy, and then on that T. Higgins, that touchdown. I mean, that's just a great play by T. Higgins. Nahshon Wright, and initially from my point of view in the stands, I thought Nahshon Wright intercepted the ball. And then all of a sudden I hear that, the guy next to me on T, and I'm like, what the hell happened? So, so Nahshon Wright was in position to make a play on a football. So it wasn't like he was beaten outright by T. Higgins. It's just these 2 receivers are very talented and they're very good. And Joe Flacco was getting the ball to them more often than not. So, but the final 2 minutes is where all right, we got it, and that's where the lack of the pass rush really kind of came to the forefront there, not putting enough pressure on Burrow, not being able to kind of alter the receivers' routes at the line of scrimmage. So, not sure because of the final 2 minutes, because they had a lead, they were playing a different kind of coverage. Again, I was walking down the ramp at that point, so I left my seat, but it definitely it's something that this defense basically it lives and dies by the turnover. If they can get turnovers, most likely not, the Bears will win the game. So I don't think I answered your question, John. I think I just kind of talked about it, filibustered here for a long time. But I think as long as the Bears win, I don't care if they win by 3 points and a defensive battle, if they win by 15 points in an offensive shootout, they just got to win the game.
You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
And they did for the most part. Alyssa, real quick, would you rather win that shootout with the defense giving up points, or would you rather them tightened up and held the Bengals in check and won 2017?
Yeah, I had a little time to think about it since Danny got to answer first, but you know what? I mean, I like that we're seeing them win in different ways, like I was talking about earlier before, because the defense had a rough outing. They had all those injuries. They were going against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I mean, that's just like a matchup nightmare when you're on your fourth and fifth cornerbacks here. So, I mean, now that I know that they won and like my heart calmed down, I feel like I'm happy with the result that we saw that the offense can get into a shootout and win. Again, I know that they were playing the Bengals defense, but it's still seeing them win in different ways, seeing that the offense can step up and win them games. We've seen the defense step up and win them games. And I think that it's going to make for a more balanced effort from the team.
And that's the only reason I'm sorry, John. Just no reason why I'm harping on the run game, because if you can develop that running attack and kind of possess the ball, win a time of possession, that gives less exposure to your defense, and those guys can be off the field, kind of resting and getting ready to go after the quarterback. Plus, if you get a lead, now those guys can pin their ears back and they know that the offense is going to throw. So I guess the offense will help eventually the defense, but I just don't think Dennis Allen has all the horses he needs to run exactly the defense he was. So he's doing what he can, the best he can with what he has currently on the roster.
And to your point earlier, Danny, about Jamar Chase, that he's going to get his. He had 23 targets and 16 receptions against the Steelers. So it's not like this is the first time that he just goes off. Like he's gonna get his catches, he's gonna get his yard, he's gonna get his touchdown. So it's not like the Bears just I can't believe they didn't contain Jamar Chase. No one does. But right. one of the comments in the chat room was that Austin Booker needs to be our savior, and I find that interesting now that Dayo Dangbo is out for the year with an Achilles injury. Danny, can Austin Booker help this pass rush or even improve this pass rush? And I believe you also have some tape to talk about him.
Yeah, Austin Booker was a guy I was looking forward to seeing play live in person. It was his first game once he was activated from IR, and I expected him to have an impact, and he did have an impact on the game. There's some good tape and some stuff that he needs to work on as well, but he's a second-year player developing. So to call him a savior, I think it's putting a little bit too much pressure on the kid, but he definitely is going to be able to help this pass rush. So the first tape here is a strip sack that I want to show you on Joe Flacco. And the one thing about Booker is his get off and his length. He's got almost 34-inch arms. And this is, guys, why I talk about arm length and pass rushers. You see here what he does is that one arm pull position of pass rush, gets into the chest of the offensive tackle, Orlando Brown, and then wins it with leverage, gets him off balance, and runs right through him into Joe Flacco, causes the strip sack, which eventually leads to a Bears field goal. So, this is the stuff that Austin Booker can give you here, is that get off of the first step quickness, plays hard. His motor runs at 100 miles an hour, and he's got that length, and he's got the ability to get after the quarterback. And again, we see right here, uses the leverage, gets that one, extends that arm into the chest of Brown, gets him off balance, and runs right through him into the quarterback there, Joe Flacco, causing the fumble. So these are the things that Austin Booker can bring as well as what Dennis Allen was going to probably utilize him here, is he runs a lot of stunts, a lot of games up front with defensive linemen, whereas defense tackles can crash inside, allow Booker to kind of use a lot of ability to go ahead and loop around and bring some of that pressure in the middle. So we're going to see Dennis Allen probably get a little more creative here with Austin Booker, in terms of his stunts and games up front with the defensive line. Now, the area in which Booker still needs to get better at is this next clip here, is we're going to show pretty much, this is the wrong one, but pretty much here, same move, same player, right? Booker does the same thing, uses the one arm pull to pass rush there, try to run through Orlando Brown, but Brown stuffs his initial throw upfield. And this is where Booker needs to develop his pass rush arsenal. He's got to come up with a counter move to be able to get, once the lineman gets him stopped in his initial rush upfield, he's got to be able to counter and disengage from that blocker and still get to the quarterback. That's an area in terms of where we want to see Austin Booker get better. I'm not sure why we're running the Colson Loveland play here. I know it was a great blog, but we're talking about Austin Booker at this point. So, all right. So again, this is the area of which he needs to develop in his game. And again, Dennis Allen, the way he's going to utilize him with some of these stunts and games, I think that's going to free him up to use his athletic ability and his length to be able to generate a pass rush, not necessarily go one-on-one versus these big tackles. So that's a thing there. Now, the other thing which I think the Bears are looking for Booker to kind of help them. The way he caught my eye, Austin Booker, was at the Senior Bowl, and it was a skinny kid, 240 pounds, 6'3", 6'4". I hadn't really watched him, but what he was doing in terms of at the Senior Bowl, in terms of the run defense, how he was playing with intensity, and the way he was setting that edge and playing with fire, I was like, that really caught my eye. And then eventually I saw him, in the pass rush drills, and the rest is history. So where they're going to need him here is, do they need him to be a very stout in terms of the run defense, especially if he's going to be the starter here. Now here, I love his motor. He plays 100 miles an hour, crashes down the line, and makes that play on the running back. Great. Love that. The one thing I do want to caution him is he's got to remember to set that hard edge. He crashes so hard, so quick. If Chase Brown decides to go ahead and cut back against the grain and go to the backside of that play there, he's got Drew Sample there that's going to pretty much pin Booker inside, and now he's got a ton of room there to run. So the one thing I do want him to kind of be cognizant of is run. Be able to set that hard edge, funnel everything back inside. Don't give up quickly in terms of just crashing down the offensive line and make a play. But that's the thing that I think coaches are going to have to kind of drill into his head, because he is so eager, because he plays with like 100 miles an hour, like his hair is on fire. He's eager just to see something and quickly react. And I think that's where some of the play action, some of the the RPO stuff could get him in the future. So hopefully that's where the coaching is going to have to come in now. And remember, it's a second-year player. Really you could tell he was just chomping at the bit to be out there Sunday versus the Bengals. And I feel like he made an impact. We felt him out there. We saw him out there. He's just got to get more consistent in terms of developing that pass rush arsenal as a pass rusher. And do not forget that you're setting the edge is one of the more important things playing defensive end in this defense. And I think that's, if he improves in those areas, I think we're going to see a bigger, a more effective Austin Booker.
So, yeah, we talked about Austin Booker. We're all excited to see what his progress will look like. The Bears did trade for a defensive end today. We're going to have Danny break him down in a second. But, Alyssa, the trade deadline has come and gone. And so the Bears make a moderate trade. It's kind of a pick swap. They bring a guy in. Was there anything that you felt like they may have left on the board, or something you wish they would have done? Or are you happy that Ryan Poles didn't get that itch where he's trading, second and third rounders for guys that he's going to have to extend, or might be a bust, or we know what his track record is with trades. So how did you feel about this trade deadline? Because there were some massive trades with, Quentin Williams going to Dallas and Sauce Gardner going to Indianapolis. And we're talking multiple first-round picks in Gardner and a first- and second-round pick for Quentin Williams. And there was some trade, Johnson. The Jets had a fire sale. And so, they didn't get rid of Johnson, their D-end, or Breece Hall. And some other guys stayed put as well. Jalen Waddle, not that I think the Bears were going to be pursuing him, but some of those names that we thought might be trade candidates are staying put. What were your overall thoughts of the Bears' activity before the trade deadline?
Yeah, I mean, I think we knew that they needed to go out and they needed to get another body in that defensive end room, just because of all the injuries, especially with Dio being done for the year at that Achilles injury. And interestingly enough, you're talking about the Jets fire sale. Just a couple hours ago, Jordan Schultz, an NFL insider, he said that the Bears are actually making a push for Jermaine Johnson, and it would have been a second-round pick. So maybe that was a little too rich for Ryan Poles' blood, which I agree. We talked on, for weeks before the trade deadline on this show about, should the Bears make a move, and if it makes sense and if it's not too costly. And I feel like that would have been too costly a move. So now they go out and they get Tryon Shoyinka, who, basically it was just a late round pick swap. The Bears, they sent a 6 for Tryon Shoyinka and a 7th round pick as well. And, during his time with the Buccaneers, his first 4 years, he had 15 sacks. I think that he's an undiscovered talent. We'll see. He'll have a lot of opportunity, I think, now, with this injury riddled defensive end group. So, I mean, I didn't expect them to go out and make a huge, move. I'm really glad. I think Ryan Poles has kind of learned his lesson, with some of the ones that haven't worked out as well. But I mean, I was a little jealous getting to see some other teams and, make some big moves there. But we knew that they had to go out and make a move at defensive end just because of the injuries and they needed somebody else. So I think this was a very safe move for Ryan Poles, but I think it's one that could ultimately pay off. I think it could end up being a win. We'll see. It's a 1-year rental, but perhaps he'll prove to be a difference in this pass rush group.
Danny, we talked about what the Bears should be doing before the trade deadline, and you were a little more bearish than bullish on this, and that's kind of where they landed. And they didn't spend a second round pick. They go out and they basically, for all intents and purposes, get maybe a depth piece here with Tryon Shoyinka. What do you know about him? Big body guy, might fit that Dennis Allen scheme. What do you know about him, and what can Bears fans expect out of him?
Yeah, Joe Tryon was a defensive end at Washington. He was actually a teammate of Kyler Gordon with the Huskies coming out of 2019 class. He was a first-round pick with the Bucks, 32nd overall. He nailed it there. He fits the criteria. He's got the height, 6'5", 260, 34-inch arms, 35-inch vert, had a 1.64 10-yard split at his pro day with a 4.6. Not sure my mic went mute there, but anyway, so a 7.183. So he's a bigger, more athletic Austin Booker guy we were just talking about right now. And similarly, for his first 4 years in Tampa Bay, he was somewhat productive, more of a rotation guy, but he was used a lot as an outside linebacker. You can see here, rushing from a 2-point stance. And so basically, he's a guy that now is going to have to put his hand in the ground on a more consistent basis, but he's got the size and length. He's got about 260 here in terms of weight. It could be a bit bigger than that as well. But again, this guy wins with his size, his length, athletic ability, and a motor. So like I said earlier, bigger, more athletic, maybe Austin Booker, and you're probably going to see him, early on just be a depth piece, but then eventually, if he shows out there, we talked about Booker and the way Dennis Allen's going to scheme him to go ahead and affect the pass rush or affect the quarterback and be generate some pass rush. I think Tryon could do the same thing here. Tryon can have the same effect there as well on the opposite side, or even maybe backing up with Booker. So it's a piece that I think Dennis Allen's has a plan for in terms of how he's going to utilize that length and that athletic ability. But the kid is a high energy, high motor. He's got the tools in terms of length and athletic ability and the foot quickness, and plays hard. His motor always runs hard as well. So it's something I'm curious to see how they incorporate him. Run defense hasn't been the greatest, but it's okay. It's not horrible. So we'll see how he gets incorporated there. But again, they needed a piece. They needed a body. I mean, they're losing bodies every week now. So with Dio going out and on top of Shamar Turner and so on, some of the other injuries, I know Dominic Robinson could come back from an ankle injury this week. So they had to get a body there. In terms of the original question, in terms of was I disappointed? No, I was not disappointed. The Bears, for me right now, are not a one player away from being a contender, right? Could they have gotten a player and maybe made the playoffs? Sure, but that's giving away future assets just for a short term satisfaction. I think the Bears are going to hopefully stay the course and build the right way. And now you got the tools on offense. I think you might have to fortify one or two positions in the interior or tackle at the offensive line. But I think offensively, I think you're looking pretty good here, right? And then now you have to go in the offseason, and now you can fortify your defensive line. You can fortify some of the other positions there in terms of the second or third level, however you see fit. But just giving up assets, and I know the Cowboys, gave up a second this year and a first next year for Quinn Williams. He's a guy, prime of his career, 27, 28 years old. Really is an effective guy in terms of the middle. But are the Bears a Quinn Williams away from winning the Super Bowl? I don't think so. Max Crosby's name was tossed out there as well. Again, would it cost too much? And with a guy like Crosby, what would you do to your cap moving forward, right? In terms of some other players or other acquisitions you want to do, later on. So I like the fact that they didn't do anything. It's a short term gain here. They needed a body, and I think Shoyinka fits the mold of what Dennis Allen likes to do with his defensive ends.
And I know we're not a Cowboys podcast or a Colts podcast, but it's just interesting that the Cowboys aren't really a Quentin Williams away from a Super Bowl either. And you let Micah Parsons go because you brought in the two picks that you thought are going to turn into, two, low money guys that are going to be basis for your quote unquote rebuild on the fly, but then you go and you get Quentin Williams, and I don't know. I didn't really understand that move by the Cowboys. The Colts must feel like they are really comfortable with the Danny Dimes moving forward because they're going to be using 2 first-round picks on a cornerback, which means you're not in the market for a quarterback anytime soon because you feel comfortable with who you got and you're a cornerback away from making a run. But and we know the history of trading multiple first-round picks for a non-quarterback. We saw when the Bears did it with Khalil Mack, he made an impact, but it didn't equate to, any big playoff runs. We saw, it worked out for Jalen Ramsey, but they already had the system. They already had the system in place in Los Angeles. We saw Jamal Adams go for 2 first-round picks. That was a terrible trade. And so we see it with Micah Parsons because they feel like they got the quarterback in position and the offense ready to go. And we'll see if that pays off. And we're going to see if these moves pay off as well. It was an interesting trade deadline, to say the least. 2 high-profile players going for a lot of picks. And Danny, one more quick question before we move on to the Giants game. How quickly do you think that Shoyinka can get acclimated to this defense before he's actually playing snaps for this team? Is he dressed and playing some snaps this weekend?
It could be. I could see him coming in and playing some limited snaps, maybe put him in certain pass rush situations, give him a couple of calls, have him, not overrun his play in terms of the whole playbook, but, just get him in there because, again, you're down bodies. And if Dominic Robinson's not ready to go, you have to pull guys off the practice squad. I think they just signed Jonathan Garvin last week up to the practice squad. So you're pulling a guy literally just got off the street 2 weeks ago to come in and play for you some meaningful snaps. So I think, depending on what they give him some situational stuff, but I do think you could possibly see him out there on Sunday playing some meaningful snaps there for sure.
All right, we're going to shift gears and start talking about this upcoming game with the Giants. And I think the biggest thing going into this game that we need to talk about, or at least we have to recognize, is that I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in Soldier Field watching this game. And so there it is. So
that's automatic win. That's automatic win right there.
That's right.
Mark it.
I got my Okay, sure, why not?
Was this a surprise trip? Because I didn't know you were coming in town.
Yeah, it got moved around. It's been pushed. It's been moving from weekend to weekend, and finally we settled on this weekend. So I'm gonna be coming out this weekend. I'm gonna be enjoying Chicago. I'm gonna get my Portillo's dog like I always like to do. And
all those this weekend? Is that what we're doing?
From what we're gonna. I don't think he knows that yet, but yeah.
I'm gonna say because I didn't get an invite, so maybe I'm off the list. I don't know.
I don't. He wasn't invited, but I'm gonna be. I'll be sending out invitations shortly to Aldo's house.
I know I missed a week, but I don't mean miss a week, miss a lot, right?
A lot happens in a week, Danny. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being there. It looks like there's 80% chance of rain it's going to be like 44 degrees, but Bear football, hooray! Bear weather, can't wait. Yeah, we wouldn't get that in Arlington Heights, would we? That's a subject for a different time. But at any rate, let's talk about this upcoming game, Alyssa. The Giants are not the Bengals when it comes to offensive firepower. They don't have T. Higgins. They don't have Jamar Chase. They don't even have Malik Neighbors right now because he's on IR. So they do have Jackson Dart, and they don't have Cam Scatteraboo either. But they have Jackson Dart and, a bunch of pretty solid number 2 receivers. Does anything scare you about Jackson Dart, or is it more of the Bears secondary that might be scaring you? Or does Jackson Dart's running ability scare you? Anything going into this about Jackson Dart give you cause for pause?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, his running ability, that was something I was thinking about going into this. But also, like you said, I think it's more of the Bears secondary. I know, like, this was, you kind of look back at that awful performance they had in week 2 against the Lions and how they followed that up. But again, like Danny has mentioned, that comes with the takeaways. So if they can force Jackson Dart into some mistakes and get some early turnovers, I think that defense can start to roll. I mean, it helps that they're going to be at home as well. And it does help that, Malik Neighbors isn't playing in this game. Otherwise, that would be a very scary matchup of him against Tyreek Stevenson. So, I mean, I think this is a potential trap game. I think the Giants are a lot better than their 2-win record. And they more just like the Bears, they have so many injuries that they've had to deal with. But on offense, I think, Jackson Dart has shown a lot of promise, but he doesn't have the weapons that Joe Flacco did. So I'm not feeling as scared. I think this has the potential to be a nice bounce back game for the defense, a nice get right game. And if they can get an early turnover, I think that they can really settle into this and just control it on offense.
Danny, does any part of this offense, whether the three wide receivers of Wan'Dale Robinson, Ray McLeod, Darius Slayton, what's your biggest concern on the Giants offense? Now Tyrone Tracy is probably the lead back there. You see Theo Johnson, the tight end, has been getting some work in there. What do you think is the biggest thing that the Bears need to key in on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, Malik Neighbors being out, and then obviously their leading rusher and Scatterbo being gone for the year, that's going to hurt them production-wise. But, Jackson Dart has been pretty impressive, in terms of getting in there, staying in their pocket, making some things happen with his legs. So he's got, is a guy that you have to be aware of in terms of, his ability to create stuff with his feet. Tyrone Tracy is a solid, running back. So he's not a guy that just off the scrap heap. So he's a guy that could hurt you as well. But the one thing here in terms of the receiving, Wan'Dale Robinson is a quick twitch, more like a slot receiver. Darius Slayton has some deep speed, and Theo Johnson leads them, I believe, in touchdowns with five receiving touchdowns. So they have some weapons there that they can hurt you with. And again, for me, it's all what the Bears do, right? If they come out there and set the tone offensively and run the ball and be physical at the point of attack, this is where the offensive line, I believe, is going to be tested by this Giants defensive front. We talked about Brian Burns leads the NFL with 11 sacks, so Theo Benedict will get tested there, in terms of the pass rush. So hopefully, I'm sure Ben Johnson will have a plan there in terms of how to offset that problem there on the Giants defense. So control the ball, and then defensively, we talked about turnovers, right? Got to keep continue to make turnovers. The one guy we didn't touch on, and we're kind of recapping the Bears defense is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think he had a positive effect on the Bears defense. He had a sack, coming in, playing that slot corner position with Gordon now. I think he had a sack there. There were a couple of plays where he affected the pass there. So it might have been credited with one or two PBUs, but I think that's a guy that's, once he continues to get implemented or ingrained in this Bears defense, I think we should see him hopefully make some more contributions. But touch on earlier, John, you get turnovers, you create turnovers, and this defense usually going to end up winning. So that's the key for the Bears is can you get the ball turnover with Jackson Dart as an interception, or rip it out in terms of creating fumbles. But if you can do that and control the line of scrimmage on offense in terms of the run game, I think the Bears should be able to win this game. I want to say handily, but let's say easily.
And who's to say if weather's not a factor here, if it is in fact raining? So we'll have to see how that goes. Let's move on to the other side of the ball. Alyssa, the Giants defense may not be statistically as bad as the Bengals, but they have their woes as well. The run defense problems, pass defense, not much better, but they do have Brian Burns, who leads the league in sacks with 11. So when looking at this Giants defense, they do have Abdul Carter, the highly touted rookie out of Penn State. And so they do have talent on that side of the football. What are you expecting from the Bears offense going up against this Giants defense?
Yeah, I think kind of what Danny said earlier in the show, where you want them to establish the run. And I think that they are going to lean on the run game. You look at this run defense, and it's the second worst in the NFL. They're allowing over 150 rushing yards per game. There's a lot of missed tackles. You look at last week's game against the 49ers, and Christian McCaffrey went off he had 173 scrimmage yards, including over 100 on the ground. So, whether it's DeAndre Swift and or Kyle Monangai, or if it's, Kyle Monangai carrying the workload, again, I feel really confident in this offense. If they really establish the run early, get Caleb into a nice rhythm, that's going to be that point that they're going to focus on there.
Danny, what do you know about this Giants defense? What should the Bears try to attack?
Yeah, they're pretty much in the middle of the pack, both in run defense and pass pass defense. So I think it's pick your poison in terms of how you want to do it. For me, personally, I would just run the ball and make them stop the run first, and build everything off the play action. Obviously, the big guy in the middle, Dexter Lawrence, has had the great year in terms of stats. I think only has half a sack this season. Obviously, the big ticket guys are Brian Burns on the outside with 11 sacks, and Kayvon Thibodeau with 2.5 on the outside. So I think both tackles are going to be put to the test here with the Giants edge defense. So, well, it's a good test, I think, overall for the offensive line. We just kind of sing their praises in terms of this past game versus Cincinnati. Well, now let's go ahead now. Let's in terms of a little bit more in terms of in terms of step up in class here with the Giants defensive front. So let's see him kind of continue that ability to create those run lanes and make positive runs there with both. Hopefully, DeAndre Swift is back. We haven't seen obviously tomorrow we'll see the first injury report of the week. But if he's not, then I think with Burton Brown and Kyle Malenga, they're gonna have to carry the tote again here for them for this week. So, but yeah, I mean, just this team it's gonna be a close game. I mean, the Giants have been relatively for the most part they play opponents pretty well, so they keep it close, and they play hard for Brian Dable. For all the talk about him being on the hot seat, this team does play hard for him, and it does appear like his players like him. So I do expect him to come in here and give the Bears a challenge. So by no means is it going to be an easy cakewalk. So I just like to see the Bears kind of dominate both on the offense and defensive lines and see what happens.
All right, before we talk about the schedule and the remainder of those games in November, I want to look at the chat room real quick. Looking at this, should we need to try out Asante Samuel? This is from Brian Gilmore. Try out Asante Samuel for help. Now, I believe he is a free agent now. Danny, what do you know about Asante Samuel? Obviously, there's the lineage there, but as far as healthy, good, potentially a good or worth trying out to see if he could bring some reinforcements to the secondary.
Yeah, I would try him out. He's coming off of a neck injury. He was just medically cleared, so that's why he's now going out trying out for a bunch of teams. So yeah, definitely a guy that I think. I like coming out of Florida State. You talked about the lineage. His dad obviously played in the NFL. So, slot corner, a guy could kick outside to play a little bit corner there. But, the defensive secondary, I think, could use all the help it can get. So if you can bring in a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., I definitely would take a look at him. Obviously, health is the big key there. If he's cleared to play, I definitely would take a flyer. Why not?
And this other one, Alyssa, is talking about, please talk about how, this is from Bruce Ali Walter Jordan, please talk about how DJ Moore continues to be an attack dog on the offense, underrated. He may not be that, Caleb's favorite target as far as statistically wise, but he's being used in a number of different ways on this offense and still coming up with clutch plays, being put in the backfield, getting underrounds, being part of the trick plays. What do you think about DJ Moore's usage so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the early success that Rome Odunze has had this season and where he's established himself as that the number one wide receiver, I think, I feel like the Bears are trying to get DJ the ball as much as possible. And I think that this game was a really nice example of how they can use him in the passing game, as a runner. And heck, we know he can throw the ball too. And I can't wait to see more of these trick plays. I kind of, we didn't get to touch too much on that, but I feel like this is the first time we're really seeing what this Ben Johnson Bears offense is going to look like. And I'm kind of excited for next year when they're really in the groove of things. But yeah, I think it's about getting DJ the ball as much as they can, and they're finding ways to do it. And I mean, he's making the most of it, and he's just a tough football player. And it's really like, what did he say on Hard Knocks? Football is fun. And you can see that when he's out there on the field.
That's great. And I'm glad that they think football is fun, because sometimes if you're getting paid, maybe it's not fun, but I don't know.
Bears football isn't always fun.
It's not. Bears football is not always fun. So last topic here, I want to kind of zoom out and look at the month of November and the upcoming games, because if you look at the divisional matchups this week, there's the Bears schedule, but just a real quick recap. I believe the Vikings have Baltimore, the Lions have the Commanders, and I believe the Packers have the Eagles. And so, at least, a couple games that the division rivals could lose this week. And if the Bears beat the Giants, then they're really in the thick of it. They're in the hunt right now. I believe they are the 8th seed right now, looking in. Go ahead and put those games back up, Aldo. Let's look at this November schedule here. We're on week 10 with the Giants. And then next week, they're on the road against Minnesota, and they are hosting the Steelers after that. And then the final game of November, they will be on the road in Philadelphia on Black Friday on a nationally, I guess it's a national game on Amazon Prime on Black Friday. So I guess my question would be, sitting here at 5-3, what do you see their record being going into December? Because it gets a little tight going into into December and January, whenever you got Green Bay twice and you got the Niners and you got the Lions again. Do they need to make some hay here and beat the Giants and maybe beat the Vikings as they should have in week 1? Do they get after Aaron Rodgers at home? And then obviously it's kind of an uphill climb against the Vikings, or excuse me, the Eagles. And so out of those 4, could they win 3-2? Danny, what do you think?
I'd say 2. I say 2 out of those 4. Obviously, you want I want 3. I want them to beat Aaron Rodgers so bad. I do not want him to come here with as a Steeler and still say he still owns the Bears. So that's if you get the Giants and you get you get Aaron Rodgers and you maybe get another one of those games there as well. I would love, and the Packers are not looking too sharp right now, especially with Jordan Love. But that's the thing with the Bears is if you get some guys healthy back in terms of, I believe Kyle Gordon, he is eligible to come back for that Packers game if I'm not mistaken, because he missed 4 games, so he missed last week's. He missed, so that this, the Minnesota game was the 4th week. So I think he's eligible to come back for that Steelers game, and get him and some of the other defensive guys kind of incorporated and create something where, if you can win, if you beat the Giants this week and then you add 2 or 3 more victories, you get 9. Anything happens that last week versus Detroit, you can be, come out here the season with 10, maybe sneak into the playoffs. I think that's a huge, obviously improvement, but also a huge statement there for Ben Johnson and the culture that he's setting here with the staff.
Alyssa, if they win this week, that puts them at 6-3, which means there are 8 games remaining, which means they would only have to go 4-4 to get to 10 wins in the 8 remaining games. Not that I've thought about this. Yeah. Or I've just been replaying this in my head 5,000 times since I've looked at the schedule. But,
he wants to hit on his record prediction from earlier.
Yes, I do. So looking at those games in November, you have the Giants, Vikings, Steelers, and Eagles. What do you think that the Bears are capable of coming out of November?
Let me tell you something. It's very difficult if you really think about this.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that back half of the schedule too after November, and I feel like this presents a nice opportunity for them to really string together a nice set of wins here. I feel that, obviously they should have. I feel like the Giants game is obviously the easiest of the ones that they have in November, and you look at the Vikings, and I feel like that's a game they should have won in week 1. Granted, both teams are a lot different than they were back in week 1, but I think that those division games, I think the Bears have a shot with that one. The Aaron Rodgers coming to Soldier Field is nightmarish, and I need the Bears to beat them. I can't hear about that again. And that Eagles game, they just don't play well in Philly, and that's going to be a national game, not prime time technically, but everyone's going to be watching. Oh, it's going to be broadcast to the entire world, by the way, this game. So, that scares me. So, I mean, I feel like 2, I would be pleased with. I mean, 3, I feel like they're capable of 3, and it would be the Giants, the Vikings, and the Steelers. But I mean, I would love for them to get 3, but I'm feeling like 2, borderline 3 is where I'm at.
I think you got to get 3. Honestly, and I don't think it's like they're going to miss the playoffs if they don't win 3 in a row, but you got to beat the Giants because that's a team that you're expected to beat, and good teams who are going to make the playoffs need to beat the teams they're expected to beat. I think that the Vikings are so up and down, and everyone's talking about how great JJ McCarthy played against in their win last week, but it wasn't like he was Joe Montana. It wasn't even Brady. Like he played well. But 143 yards? Is that what he had passing? I don't have the box score in front of me. It wasn't like he had an MVP performance. So it was a good team win, and it was a great schematic win. And I have all the respect in the world for Kevin O'Connell. But I think that's a winnable game. And then they got to beat the Steelers for no other reason for 2 reasons. 1, we can't have the Aaron Rodgers I own you thing anymore. And 2, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and all my friends are Steelers fans. And so if those things happen, I'm never going to hear the end of it. The fact that Aaron Rodgers, who's a former Packer, goes to their team and then beats the Bears in Chicago, I don't think I can physically handle that. I honestly don't think that I can deal with that. Like, I don't know what my body would do if that happens. And so they have to beat the Steelers one way or another. So I think, you win 3 in a row, and I'm for whatever reason, throughout this 9 years, I've gone from, Mr. Curmudgeon to Mr. Positivity. I don't know where that transition happened, but all of a sudden I'm just
therapy.
Ben Johnson.
It must be it. Ben Johnson in therapy. Yeah. You win 3 and all of a sudden you're 9-3. And then you only gotta win, and you only win like 1 more, maybe 2 more to get a playoff berth. And so
we're doing it again. You know that, guys.
I know what we're doing, but let us do it. We were Danny. We were breaking down mock drafts this time last year. I'm pretty sure. I think that we were talking about who the Bears are going to draft, or who the coaching candidates were going to be, or all this other stuff. Like, we don't get to talk pie in the sky. Well, if they do this, they're going to have a good chance in the playoffs. Whatever. So let's just ride this train as long as we can, because who knows what, tomorrow's not a guarantee. We've seen the Bears lose a lot of games in a row, and then we're talking about the free agents and draft positioning and all this other stuff. So let's just enjoy this talk while we can.
And I would like to say we have celebrated 5 wins already this season, which is the entire total of last year. So, and we're only at the halfway point. So
right.
I mean, it's hard not to be a little optimistic, especially because things, when we expect them to lose games or winning. And I mean, again, we're at the halfway point. Let us be optimistic, because who knows how long it's going to last.
Me either. Danny, how do you feel about a Black Friday game on Amazon?
I'm not feeling so good about that one either.
Not good at all.
The opponent's one thing, and then but it's just like it throws off. It's not even like a Thursday game, which is like people are used to, like on Thanksgiving, or everyone has to play a Thursday game. This is a weird Friday game, and then later on in the year, I think the entire
world will see this game. It's being broadcast for free.
These guys are getting away with murder. They're getting away with murder.
I need you to stop saying that the whole world's going to be watching, because that's not making me feel any better. I need you.
If they win these next 3 games, they're in a willing to win streak. If they lose that game against Philly, okay, so it's a loss, and they can rebound again. But that's the one thing I like about this staff is so far we haven't seen, other than obviously in the first 2 games, we haven't seen like that long losing streak, right? Under that became well known under the Eberflus regime. But so this thing is that's why it was so important to bounce back and get that win in Cincinnati this week, because you don't want that lingering 2-game losing streak going into another game and putting a lot of pressure on you at home versus the Giants. So I think just my only concern is the Bears can score on the Giants. The Bears can score on the Steelers. The Bears can score on the Vikings. I have no concerns about the offense, right? It's the defense. Can they get enough? And we said earlier, turnovers. They have to get turnovers. Can they force? Aaron Rodgers was notorious for not throwing interceptions. Maybe they can get JJ McCarthy, but even the first week they got him and they ended up somehow winning that game. But Jackson Dart, rookie, can he get him to get cuff the ball up a couple of times? So that's the key with this Bears defense, is just and it's so hard to rely on turnovers, because obviously, that they're not a given. So if they can go on there and create turnovers, this team can beat anybody. You just give this offense extra possessions, and what they're doing now is they're capitalizing on some of these extra possessions, right? We got to clean up special teams, guys. I think we may have the worst special teams coach in football. We'll get into. I might be breaking down special team coaches for you, John, at the end of the season. So we'll see in terms of possible new hires. But
Aldo's thrilled.
All the ones breakdowns of punters, which
and gunners and holders, and
Corey Hill had a sensational punt.
You guys are bad. You guys are undisciplined.
Yes, we're off the rails.
If they could just get those turnovers, if I knew the defense was going to come up every week and get 3-4 turnovers, I'd be like, hey, Bears are going to win 10 games this year, probably. Easier to call, but it's because we rely on so much on those turnovers and we can't depend on them. It's so hard to pick them in a lot of these games.
Yeah, and eventually I'd love for them to win a game that they are absolutely just stone cold underdogs on, and that's going to be the Philadelphia game. All these other games are winnable. They may be underdogs by a couple points because they're on the road or what have you, but going up against a Super Bowl contending team or a Super Bowl favorite like the Eagles, that's a really good barometer. We always do this. We are so far ahead. We're talking about a game a month from now. Let's hope they beat the Giants. We need to focus on beating the Giants right now.
We're making progress, though. We're going from talking about mock drafts to just talking about a month ahead, because they're going to be in the playoff race.
Yeah, I hope, yes. Because if they lose to the Giants, we're going to be talking about, doom and gloom and
Mock
hellfire and
drafts.
brimstone and mock drafts next week. So let's just enjoy it while we have it, I suppose. So, but I do think that there is and I think I saw it in the chat room, there really is a Ben Johnson effect here. I think that there is just a really big amount of trust in this coaching staff, in this head coach, in that culture, and in that system, that they're not going to be embarrassing anymore. They're not going to be, you're not going to, put a paper bag over your head while you watch this team in the stadium anymore. And now, did they have a bad loss to the Lions? Yeah, that's going to happen from time to time. But overall, it would have been easy just to go in the tank and just have that, bad mojo just carry you through. But they didn't. They picked themselves up and they were able to string together some wins. So it's very encouraging what this coaching staff and what this head coach has been able to do so far in their first year. And just by, common sense, you would think that's only going to get better. That's only going to continue to build and get more and more positive. And that's only going to amount in more and more success and more wins. So let's hope so. But
look at all the offensive stats, guys. The Bears are right up there with all the league leaders, with the Bills and some of the higher powered offenses, right? They're right up there. And this is a offense that's still gelling. It's still not clicking on all cylinders, right? We just saw what Colson Loveland can do this past week. We haven't even incorporated Cole Kmet in the offense, right? Luther Burden, he's shown his dynamic ability to be a playmaker down in football. He didn't even play last week, right? So, and Roma Dunze, had I think 3 targets or something like that and dropped, I believe, 2 of them. So, again, we're just finding ways to win because we have so many offensive weapons. And I just think as long as the offensive line gels and they continue to pound that rock with the running game, establish a running game, I think this offense is going to continue to get better and better. That's why I have no doubt they can score points. It's just, can we stop them and not give up enough points so we can, sneak out of there with a victory? That's the only thing.
Time will tell. Time will tell. All right, let's go around the horn real quick before we get out of here. Alyssa, what are you working on this week? There's a lot going on, I'm sure, as far as injuries, trades, previews, whatever you got going on. What's happening?
Yeah, over at Bears Wire, we've been covering the trade deadline, and we're going to have a whole bunch more coming off of that, as well as game preview for the Giants. So make sure you check out Bears Wire. We're going to be covering before, during, and after.
Excellent. And Danny, it's always draft season. There's always prospects to be breaking down what's going on. The first college football playoff bracket was released just before we went on the air. That was fun. So what do you got going on?
Yeah, so I released my top 10 offensive linemen last week. So that's out there on Shipman Draft Scout, heading into the interior offensive line, plugging some of those guys in and trying to put that out there here. And also digging in some of the tape for the defensive backfield. So obviously I think that's going to be maybe a need for the Bears in the offseason. One unsung guy we haven't talked about at all this season, I don't think, guys, is Kevin Byard. He's having one hell of a season back there at safety. I think the leadership he provides in that backfield, I think that's huge. I think he's a free agent this year, so hopefully they, can bring him back and re-sign him. If not, that safety cornerback position is going to be a key area that the Bears need to replenish probably in the offseason. So DBs are going to be coming up here after I release my top 10 interior offensive linemen.
Excellent stuff. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Buffone 55. I'm going to be in Chicago in a few days. I'm going to be in Soldier Field watching that game. Partying at Aldo's house. And hey, if you happen to be in Soldier Field, come see me, come talk to me. I'll be around. But that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. For Danny Shimon and Alyssa Barbieri, Aldo Gandia in the back working the controls, I'm John Buffone. Enjoy the game, everybody. We'll see you next week.